Oh, you know that.
Just kind of back up what Senator Patrick said, and actually it's in Senator Duncan's area, and I went back to visit my hometown a few weeks ago, and it's a 3A high school, and it's, you know, has oil that supports it. But there's two small school districts that are within 17 miles of the school, and they have buses in the parking lot at the larger school where I went to school to pick up students to take them to the smaller schools, because these kids don't want to compete in a 3A high school. They'd rather go to a 1A or six-man football. And I was just in there going, you know, that's just, when you look at the costs that are in these smaller schools, they're not that far apart from each other.
Ooh, you just hit a hot button at Senator Duncan.
I'm sorry?
No, he didn't.
Senator Duncan.
But I understand the issue. It's the political and cultural issues that, you know, Lubbock County has 7 school districts. Even to get them to share, you know, we had an effort that Mr. Moak was involved in just to try to get them to share services. Was unsuccessful because of the political, you know, we've set up, each school board is a political entity, and the culture is such that there's not the will or desire to, either from the staff perspective, and that would be the superintendents, to the board who is elected to preserve that school district. There's not the political will to do it. And I would tell you that there's not the political will in the legislature to go force that either, based on different situations. So the only way you can do it is incent it. We tried to incent it, as Eddie was talking about, but still, that doesn't overcome the cultural issues that are in, especially in these rural areas, where the survival of a city or the identity of a city or community or a legacy depends on that school district being there. It's painful, and there have been consolidations in the rural areas, even in my district.
We were in your district.
That's exactly. I remember when you did that, and it was, and I think an example that Senator Hochberg, Representative Hochberg, and I were talking about was Fort Elliott Consolidated ISD, and I think they've had. It was painful when they did it, but they certainly realize the success and utility of it now that it's done. But it just takes, you know, people within those communities. This legislative body, the only thing that I think realistically we can do without just beating our head against the wall is to try to provide proper incentives for either consolidation or shared services. And sharing services is probably more of a realistic way to achieve those efficiencies.
And I absolutely agree. I'm wondering if somebody from TEA can give us some numbers.
Yeah.
We put that down. We made that available years ago. We did that very thing. We put together incentives to incentivize, not consolidation, but shared services. And the question was, how many school districts have actually availed themselves of those shared services? That might be a very good list for us to see.
I'll be happy to do some research and take that as a homework assignment. But Senator Duncan, you're exactly right. And to be really frank, I mean, that is where Chapter 39 sanction authority has come in handy for the agency. In a situation where a district just wouldn't make those decisions, we've had to make them for them. In some cases, we've taken over a district. In some cases, we've appointed conservators, and they'll make those tough personnel decisions that the district can't make. In one case, I'm ordering consolidation of a district this year just for years of underperformance and inability to make those tough decisions. And it's not something that I like to do. And matter of fact, when confronted with this earlier in the year, my first response was, y'all need to get with your neighboring districts and your service center and enter into shared service agreements. And that's really not happened for political reasons. And so I'm having to go in and make those decisions for them.
Good. There are political reasons involved, absolutely. But the other thing you run into at the small school level, just from having done that and worked there, well, I am now, but I actually have a little bit of support here. We spend a lot of time doing what somebody mentioned earlier as putting out the fires and trying to have, we don't have the personnel to make those plans. How do you do it? And that's where the service centers come in, or the incentive programs. What do you put out there to encourage this and then help people figure out how to do it? I mean, it was at that small school, when I was at a 1A school, I mean, I was the head of transportation, I was the head of finance, I was the head of the cafeteria program, and to try to, and you're dealing with, and I'm not complaining because it was an awesome job, but then to throw that on top of it and say, okay, you need to be meeting with your neighbors and figure out how you're going to do cooperative arrangements and agreements, there's not enough time in the day.
But if I could trade you one FTE equivalent of compliance and reporting for one FTE of a proactive, not just putting out fires, but going and solving problems, is that something we should pursue?
I better let my hummingbird brain stop moving my alligator mouth.
Turn to your right.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a question. It's going to have to go back to those organizations.
Sure, I understand that. I'm just exploring.
Let me suggest that you say yes.
That's
a good deal. That's a good deal.
I did say that earlier. I do wholeheartedly believe that effectiveness and efficiencies don't have to be mutually exclusive. And so if there are ways to do it and maintain community identity of who the schools, because that was the hardest part when we went through the consolidation. And now that it's happened, it's 6 years out. I mean, I had to move from that district because the small district that got consolidated into the larger district was my home, where I graduated high school. Oh, yeah. I mean, there were people using words with my name that don't go well. Yeah.
They did that with Governor Huckabee many years ago. Let me tell you, that was not
But
in
now
Arkansas.
they love it. They've actually moved it because they're sharing the facilities. They've actually moved another grade level over, and it's working out great. It's getting past that initial
That
emotional.
approach is usually held on to for a long time. Representative Aycock has not said a word and has actually pushed the button, so I would love to give him a chance to speak.
Let me, and I'm not sure whether to request this of Mo Casey or the commissioner or whoever has it. If we could somehow chart the M&O per student in a district versus size. In other words, if we could see a charting of that, and we may have that already, I don't know. But if we have M&O costs,
Really.
It's not a problem.
we
can do that.
Okay. If we
Lots of
could,
people.
if we chart M&O versus size, we might find the point at which an efficiency becomes more with a certain size or less with a certain size. And so I'd like to see that somewhere along this process. Secondly, and
I'm sorry.
Lynn, I think that's
Mr. Lynn could probably give you the number off the top of his head.
I bet Lynn almost knows that now. Secondly, since I've been at this now for about 4 or 5 years, and I began campaigning on this very issue in my district, I really think that the best preservation of the local schools is the consolidation of services without the consolidation of the districts. I think if they fail over and over to consolidate and congeal those services to a scale of efficiency, that they simply sign the death knell of those small school districts in many cases. And their only answer at some point is they circle the drain as many times as they can circle the drain, and they go down. And they have to consolidate, at which point they lose total control of their district. And as Senator Duncan and I both know, out in our part of the world, when you lose your schools, those communities very quickly become ghost towns. Just absolute ghost towns. And you can see them all across the western part of the state. I would encourage anybody listening that we need to find the efficiencies, and the point that those efficiencies come to a reasonable size scale is, I think, something we can all work on. But if those little small school districts insist on doing everything for themselves and not finding a point of efficiency, then I think at some point they're going to find themselves, if not mandated for consolidation, they will.
Sounds like a panel for Salem Abraham.
Well, yeah.
Don't make him do that again.
I think the formula kind of does that now. I mean, once you fall below a certain number, you don't get funded. I think is it 120 once you fall below 120?
Well, no.
No.
It actually goes the other way, that once you get below 120, we start inventing students to give you.
Exactly. That's what I mean. You guys getting funded like you have 120 down to
Right, 90.
or 90, whatever the number is, and then it drops again. Yeah, because we went through that.
Okay.
I'm not sure I'm at the end of my career, but the beginning of my career was working for a committee that actually recommended the consolidation plan, for which Bill Grusendorf, if he's behind me, hasn't forgiven me yet.